Hey students, so in this video we're going to talk about how to write the body paragraph for your narrative essay. So in your writing career, you have learned the parts to a body paragraph. You know there's a topic sentence, that you use transitioning, that you include evidence, elaboration, more evidence, more elaboration, and then you wrap it all up at the end. And so this form is very effective, but it can also be very repressive and repetitive and formulaic. It's treating an essay like a fill-in-the-blank formula. While we still need to keep the structure in mind, the narrative essay allows for us to play around with style. We're telling a story, and stories don't always fit into formulas. You need a little more freedom. So our body paragraphs must be engaging. To be engaging, the structure of our body paragraphs must be creative and varied. For instance, an outline structure might look like the following. So let's come and take a look at the structure. So in the past, this was how we structured our body paragraphs over and over and over again. But you're going to find that when you look at professional writers and also the student writers that you're going to study below, that they play around with how they structure it. They might start with a topic sentence. You always start with a topic sentence. And then they might have evidence through description. And then they might add more evidence through anecdote. Then they might go to paragraph 2 and have a topic sentence, add in another anecdote, and then elaborate and analyze all of the story they've told so far, and then wrap up. And so it's the idea that your story process is going to be a lot more natural, which actually it will be easier for some students and it will be harder for others. It just depends on how much you like the formula. And so to help you see what this might look like for a narrative essay, we're going to, again, similarly to the introduction checkpoint, we're going to take a look at some student samples in the boxes below. For the student samples, we will complete reverse outlines to better understand how they wrote their successful body paragraphs. When doing this, we're going to use our basic terms. We'll use topic, sentence, transition, evidence, elaboration, and wrap-up. So you'll still use these terms when reverse outlining. However, because this is a narrative essay, we have some new terms we're going to need to use. Your essay is going to need to establish setting. It's going to need to include characterization, conflict, transitions, which is up there. We don't need that twice. Opposition, etc. So you also might create your own terms as well. And now the process is going to be the same. We're going to look at an example of a reverse outline, and then you will choose either student sample number 2 or student sample number 3 to reverse outline yourself. Now, one thing I'd like for you to note is that these are not all of their body paragraphs. So this student, for instance, had far more than these 2 body paragraphs. She had many, 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 many body paragraphs. This is what we would call the first section of her body paragraphs. So remember, when you think back to your outline that you did earlier, we're no longer working with a 5-paragraph essay that has 3 body paragraphs. Instead, we're working with sections of an essay that have multiple body paragraphs for each. So you might now have 3 sections, and in each section you might have 2 to 3 paragraphs of varying lengths, which means that overall you might have an essay that's 10, 11, 12 paragraphs. And that sounds scary, but note how our paragraphs are no longer these super long formulaic things. They can be much shorter. And we'll see that exemplified here in her body paragraphs. So let's take a look and reverse outline what she's written. So she starts, I vividly recall a time that my mom and I went to Harris Teeter to buy milk for my siblings. So her topic sentence clearly states where the paragraph takes place, the grocery store. So she establishes setting, okay? At checkout, the cashier person gave us a disgusted look. It was probably because my mom paid her in $1 bills. So here she introduces the conflict. So we go from setting to conflict. She introduces the conflict that the cashier person is being judgmental and rude. As she took the money, we happened to see her mumble words between her lips. Then she said something to us. We, Mom and I, did catch words such as you, what, miserable, stupid, foreigners. but we were unable to fully understand her. I felt inferior. So she then, after saying that the cashier was judgmental and rude, instead of just stopping there, she provides evidence by describing what the cashier does and says. So this is her evidence at play. So just like in other essays, you've had evidence and elaboration. She makes this statement that the cashier was rude, and so now she needs to prove it through her evidence, and her evidence is describing what the cashier says and does, and she even quotes some of the cashier's exact words, so we see that it's evidence. We even have quotations here. She explains, I felt inferior. She treated us different when compared to her previous customer. She treated us in a way because of our lack of English knowledge, as well as our strong accent and color of skin. Consequently, my mom passively said sorry and left, leaving the milk in her hand. And so she ends this paragraph by elaborating, by explaining how the experience made her and her mom feel and how they reacted. And so we go from setting to conflict to evidence to elaboration in this paragraph. So that's the purpose of reverse outlining. We get some ideas on how we might structure our own paragraphs. So then in her next body paragraph within this first section of her story, she says, meanwhile, so she has a good transition, on our way back to the house, the vivid image of the cashier stayed on my mind. So her topic sentence clearly states her next setting, which is her home. She says, as a 14-year-old girl, I didn't really understand why she had treated us in that manner. So she elaborates by explaining her confusion over why the cashier would be so mean. She decides that it was because the cashier judged her for her skin color. She says, therefore, I didn't understand her motives. From my own perspective, I instantly assumed her judgment came from my skin color and strong accent. So that's all her elaboration. However, good transition word, as I grew older, I realized that her judgment might have been a misinterpretation. So now she, at the end of this section of her essay, transitions to the next section of her essay, which will be about why people misjudge others. So in this paragraph, we have her topic sentence, which establishes setting. She then has her elaboration, and then she has her transition. So notice overall how this section is structured. We have setting, conflict, evidence, elaboration, setting, elaboration, transition. So we've broken from the classic formula that you've been taught, and instead you're now writing what your story needs to be a story. And so for some of you guys, this is going to happen really naturally. For some of you guys, this is going to take a lot of editing. But you will get there and you will write a really wonderful story. So to further help you kind of see the different options you have and how to build paragraphs, please either pick student sample number 2. This one's definitely shorter, doesn't necessarily mean it will be more helpful. And then we have student sample number 3, which is definitely longer and will give you more to work with. But it's up to you which one you want to choose. They're both there, and you can go ahead and reverse outline them to get a little more idea on how you might structure your body paragraphs. All right, I'm excited to see the body paragraphs that you guys produce. Remember, you have kind of 2 sections of body paragraphs, or you might have more than 2 sections, but you'll have at least 2 sections, where in the first section, you'll be telling your personal story about what you experienced, and then in your next section, you'll be having your social criticism. So at minimum, you'll have 2 sections in your essay. You might have more, especially if your story has multiple sections to it. You could have upwards to 4 to 5 sections potentially. So I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. All right, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in our next video.